What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here with Cheesehead TV, coming to you live with your Packers Daily Chat on Tuesday afternoon. The Packers announcing a roster move late in the afternoon, picking up De Beer, an offensive lineman from South Africa, I believe. He'll probably be on the roster for like 5 days and sell more jerseys than the rest of the guys on this roster combined, but exciting to have that name on the roster for the time being. Packers are off today, so not a ton of headlines outside of that. Although I did see on the old NFL Newswire, Rubin Foster was claimed by a team that has not yet been announced or reported. I would be absolutely shocked if that were the Packers, but with Gutekunst, maybe he's getting crazy. You never know, but I highly doubt it. Nice to see everybody here in the chat. Tell us some good news, says Travis. Travis, De Beer is on board. That's all you need to know. Looking sharp, Nags. Thanks. Run the table to get another beer. There you go. Is Rodgers more at blame than McCarthy? No, Zach. Absolutely not. Rodgers has played poorly in spots and has had some very uncharacteristic throws / decision-making points throughout games, but 100% McCarthy, while not entirely to blame, it's not 100% his fault. He is the head coach. The buck does stop with him. It is his operation. It is his program. Repeatedly coming up short game after game after game in similar ways falls on the head coach. And a very obvious refusal to change his approach, whether it is to help his struggling quarterback, to lean on his running game more, go to the short game, etc. Whatever adjustments he would have to make, he has clearly refused to make them. And while Rodgers' poor play at times certainly plays into it, it is 100% on McCarthy. It is his responsibility. It is his team. And the record is a reflection of his work. John Harbaugh or Josh McDaniels as next head coach. I'd be surprised at any of those happening. Definitely don't see Jim Harbaugh happening. Maybe John Harbaugh if he's let go. I wouldn't be surprised if they gave him an interview. Josh McDaniels, I don't see that being a personality fit, but you never know. We'll see. Is it realistic to expect Rodgers' mechanics to improve at this stage of his career? I think it's reasonable to expect them to get a little bit more consistent. That's the thing. If you look on my Twitter feed this afternoon, I retweeted Dusty, who does great film breakdowns every week. He put up a great throw Rodgers made over the middle, the connection down the seam to Jimmy Graham, where he actually steps into his throw, and it looks beautiful. But then you look at the plays where he's basically chucking it up for Jesus up the left sideline to Davante Adams, and there's got very little hope of completion or success, where he's throwing off his back foot, not stepping into it, not transferring his weight to gain power into his throw, etc. There's too much of that. But that doesn't mean he isn't fundamentally sound in the sense that he knows how to do it. He just has to do it more consistently. Rodgers' beard looks great. Well, that's good. That's good, John. Well, sometimes we want to point out the positive things, you know? And you're right. His beard does look good. Even though after the game he said he's got more gray in the beard these days. Okay, Aaron, just relax on that one. Hey, Aaron, any thoughts on Oren Burks' play and getting more play time at linebacker and or safety? Would like to see more of him. It's funny, he started a few weeks ago and got run all over, and then they took him out, and he hasn't played a whole lot since. I think they've liked what they've seen out of Morrison and Toomer a lot more than they have Burks in that regard. What did you make of Rodgers' comments? We got to beat Arizona, beat Chicago, etc. Don't usually see players coaching talking about the future schedule beyond the current week. Caleb, I thought it was an interesting moment. I quoted it on my Twitter feed, and of course, fans of rival teams came in and said, that's never going to happen. Some Packers fans said that too. And I don't think it's a question of him trying to predict the future there, but that is what they have to do. That is a legitimate list of the teams in order that they have to beat to even begin to consider making a postseason run, which even if they do all that, which I don't think they will, but even if they do all that, they still have like a billion other things that need to break their way outside of their schedule. So, yeah, I thought it was interesting. I thought it was kind of funny. But ultimately, I don't think it means very much. They've got to beat Cardinals on Sunday. De Beer better than the Bears. Nicholas, I agree. What are your thoughts on Morrison? He's a thumper, old school, not a great athlete. He's definitely suspect in coverage. You like him against the run. I think he's, I wouldn't say just a guy, but he's just above just a guy. Do the Packers need help at inside linebacker? Kevin, I would say so. It's been a perennially troublesome position for the Packers. They've devalued it for quite some time. My thinking would be, move Clay inside on a small contract extension. But a lot of that will be dependent on if, whoever is going to be coaching next year on defense. Is it Mike Pettin? Is it somebody new if Mike McCarthy gets fired, et cetera? Will it be scheme? Will it be a scheme fit? Things like that. Who knows if they're even running a 3-4 next year if they come up with a new coaching staff. So a lot to play out there yet. All right, Matt asks, are you on board with Gutekunst this far? Yeah, so far so good. I think he's done a really good job. I think he's set himself up really well for the future. I think he's had definite disappointments here his first season in, but I think it's pretty clear at this point that he set this team up to compete this year, if not make a deep run. He thought if things broke right, they could probably compete for a Super Bowl, but those things didn't break right. They needed most of those guys to stay healthy up front, meaning the frontline guys. The idea of losing Cobb, Allison for an extended period of time, that clearly is not part of their thinking when you're putting the roster together, but it has happened. And, not being able to get on track offensively clearly is not something that I think most people saw coming. And then on defense, last Sunday night, they're starting 3 rookies in the secondary, and they're completely different on the back end than they were when they started the year. So while some of that is expected, you're going to get through a long twisting and turning season. You got to think things are going to change. They always do in the NFL. I think he set himself up knowing he has a 5-year contract, and he's trying to ensure that he's here past that first contract. And this next offseason is a big one for him. Obviously, that first year he made tough decisions like cutting Jordy Nelson, et cetera, but I think this is the year where he is going to have to do a large overhaul. His first draft class is very promising, looks to be very good. But this next draft, with the 2 first-round picks and a number of other selections, he's really got to knock it out of the park and kind of create his core. He's still dealing with a lot of the guys that, Thompson left him. A lot has been made this year about those poor drafts at the end of Thompson's tenure. And after another offseason, that excuse is going to start wearing very thin very quickly. That's not to say that that's not a real thing that they've had to overcome. You've seen it play out throughout the year, the lack of depth at certain positions. But this next offseason is when Gutekunst will truly make the team his. We'll see how that goes throughout free agency and the draft and how they set up for the next several years under Gutekunst. In your opinion, is McCarthy gone after this year? If yes, why not cut him now, get a better draft pick? I'm not sure I agree with your thinking there. Now, you're saying if they are going to fire him, they should cut him now because they'll get a better draft pick. But if they cut him now and fire him now, what if the team rallies around whoever they choose as an interim head coach and then win a bunch of games? I mean, look, they're set up to win as far as strength of schedule goes right now, regardless of who's the coach. All of that said, I don't see the benefit in firing a guy with 5 weeks left or whatever. And that's just not how Marc Murphy and the Packers operate. They'll let the season play out. They will take a look at the whole body of work, and then they will make a decision. But firing a guy now, look, I know everyone's all excited about the Browns, but we all know they're hiring a new head coach in the next offseason. So they're getting a bunch of wins. They're getting the program on the upswing, so to speak, but it's not going to be their program long term. It's just a collection of guys playing out the string, really. So, and even if they go on a run to get to the postseason, they're still going to hire a new head coach. So I don't see what firing Mike McCarthy in week 11, 12, 13, I don't see the benefit. I just don't. What direction do you think Gutekunst will go this offseason? Travis says in all caps. I don't know. That's the great mystery, isn't it? I think we'll see a continuation of what we saw last offseason. He'll be in lots of different conversations, things like trying to go after Allen Robinson or Sammy Watkins. I think he'll be active in the free agent wide receiver market. I think he'll definitely be looking at the edge defenders, of which there will be precious few available. But But I don't think he's going to go hog wild in free agency, but I do think he's going to have a number of options available to him and a lot of cap money to play with. Is this Cobb's last season? Stanley in Green Bay? Most likely. I say it here all the time. Third contracts in Green Bay are a rare thing. I know they signed Cobb early on, with the whole idea being that he could get another bite at the apple early on in his career. But given how much time he's missed this season, how much time he has missed in prior seasons, and his up and down production when he is in there, depending on the quarterback, I would be very surprised if they brought him back. I still think he can help a team. I just don't think it's going to be in Green Bay. Do you think Joe Philbin will retire after this? No, I don't think Joe Philbin's going to retire anytime soon. I mean, maybe if Mike gets fired, he'll go with Mike wherever Mike ends up and or go find another job someplace else. But I don't think if it's the end of the road for Joe Philbin in Green Bay, that means that's the end of his career. Will Aaron Rodgers finish this season once the Packers are mathematically eliminated? Matt, that's a really good question. I was wondering about that myself yesterday, looking at the schedule. You know, they could be out of it in the next few weeks. And then do they shut him down? They've kept listing him on the injury report. He has, been there. He's been a full participant, but he's still been on the injury report with that knee. So maybe they do shut him down and play Kaiser once they're out of it. I don't know. We'll see. I think there's a possibility that could happen, though. What positions should we target in the draft? O-line, pass rusher? Well, Daniel, I think it's always a fool's errand to sit here in late November and talk about, what positions they should be looking at in an April draft. So much will change in the draft landscape, so to speak, between now and the time they're on the clock. I do think they clearly early on are the premier is always guys who can rush the passer and the guys who can get after the receivers. Corners and edge rushers are a definite kind of premium in the NFL. The Packers have a wide selection of corners. They desperately need rushers, whether it is from the outside or the interior. They need people who can get after the quarterback. They need people who can be disruptive. But I don't think they should box themselves into, we have to draft an outside linebacker. I think they need disruption on the defensive side of the ball more than anything. I've said that last year. I've said that for several years. They just need the best possible defensive players they can find. And that's not to discount the needs in other positions and other places. I do think offensive line is a place that they need to look, especially at the guard position, but I don't think they need to necessarily target that in the first round. But if one falls to them, who knows where they're going to be picking, etc. A lot to play out, a lot of variables there. What are your thoughts on the future of Tony Brown and the Packers? Kevin, I think he's got a future with Green Bay. I think he's shown a lot of promise. He's been up and down a little bit, but I really like his athleticism. You really like his combativeness. He doesn't back down from a physical challenge, especially at the line of scrimmage with opposing wide receivers. I really like him. I'm not sitting here today saying he's going to be a starter in the league, but I think he can be a pretty valuable piece to your secondary. Given that he's still very, very young, he's an undrafted rookie, he's still learning the ropes of the league, but the promise is definitely there, and it shows up down in and down out on tape. Let's take a look over here on Twitter and see what's up on people's minds over on the old tweet machine. Like Andy asking, if you were the coach, what would you tell Aaron right now? Andy, I assume you mean, what would I tell Aaron Rodgers? Oh, man, that's tough. More than anything, I would help him out by giving him a lot of easy, defined looks and telling him, stop looking downfield, just hit your primary guy designed to be open in rhythm. And I know that's very easily said, and I know it's a lot trickier than that, but I think Aaron's in his head a little bit. I don't know if you'd call it the yips, but I definitely think he's not seeing the field very well. I would help him do that. I would tell him to trust what he sees, because I think he sees things that he's not trusting as far as not only what his wide receivers are doing, but what he's seeing the defense doing. And he's looking at the rush a little bit too much. Those are all things that, Aaron Rodgers doesn't need me to tell him that. He is well aware. But as a coach, I would reinforce that, especially the not looking at the rush. I mean, just play within the design of the offense for a change. There's a widely circulated play from that game on Sunday night. I put it up on Twitter this morning. A bunch of other people have mentioned it, where it's a third down. I think it was their third drive, and it's a third down, and Jimmy Graham's on a shallow cross, and he runs into a sack basically with a wide open option underneath. And I understand he's feeling pressure, but you can stand there. You know that shallow crosser's coming. Just wait and release the football. You don't have to run every time there's an opening, every time you feel pressure. There are options for you as a quarterback. Take them. That's the design of the offense. You've seen Tom Brady make a living out of that. Just trust the offense, trust the process, so to speak. And I think things will flow easier for him. And I think he'll find that those big plays will come rather than constantly looking downfield for them. That's just me. But what do I know? Paul says, if the Packers move on from McCarthy, do you think the current power structure stays in place, or does Gutekunst get the keys again to hire his coach? Well, Paul, he never had the keys, so he can't get them again. Things could change, I guess, quickly, because Lord knows they did when Murphy originally announced that he was, heading up the search, and he was asked point blank, will the new general manager have the power to hire the coach? And he said yes. And then literally a week later, when he was announcing Gutekunst as the hire, he said Gutekunst didn't have the power to hire and fire, and that would reside with him. I don't think anything's changed. I think this was a long-term play from Murphy as far as dividing up the leadership and getting rid of the silos, as he called them. I think he did that with the look to the idea of his decision-making, him being in charge of the next head coaching search. So I would be absolutely shocked if anyone but Marc Murphy makes the next hire for head coach. Let's see what we got here. The pass rushing Clay Matthews of old is long gone, and I think every team can recognize that. However, he still seems to be a pretty valuable run stopper for this team. Do you like bringing him back on the reasonable deal to play inside linebacker? Funnily enough, that's what I was talking about at the start of the stream. I think it makes a lot of sense, but A, is Pettine back? B, does Pettine want him back? C, if Pettine's not back, who's the coach? And, past that, if they do hire him, are they still playing a 3-4? Maybe they become a 4-3 team. And then I think you can bid Matthews adieu. But I think the idea makes a lot of sense if you can get him back on a reduced deal, like you said. If Matthews is looking to get one last bite at the apple, so to speak, I think the Packers bid him adieu and he hits free agency and is signed elsewhere. We'll see. I was hoping to see more Big Bob Tonyan on Sunday. If the season slips away anymore, do you expect to see more Tonyan and Lewis, or probably a good idea to get Graham and Rodgers as much work together as possible? Well, that's something to remember. Graham is signed for 2 more years. Now, that's not to say they can't get out of that contract, but I don't think they can realistically get out of it until next offseason, not this upcoming one. So I do think there is some merit to playing, Rodgers and Graham together to get some chemistry going. But look, they've had 13 games to get some chemistry going, and it's been a hit and miss proposition. I don't think you stick them out there for that purpose in games that don't mean anything. I do think they should get Tonyan more looks. I was surprised he didn't play more Sunday night. I don't see that translating to any more snaps for Lewis, though. They've shown time and time again that they do not value him very much, if at all. They've played him very sparingly. They started him on Sunday night, and then they brought Graham in, and he didn't play again. I think the idea of getting youth out on the field and getting them experience and some snaps and, live work, I think that's a good idea. But Lewis has done everything, seen everything. He's an age-old vet. I don't see that happening. Could you talk about what made Sean Taylor so great? I was still on the younger side and don't remember much about his game. Yes, the anniversary of his death today. Zach, Sean Taylor had the most insane range of any safety I've ever seen. And, that encompasses a lot of guys. But I'll never forget, there was a game that he played in Lambeau Field against Favre and the Packers where he made 2 interceptions, one of which was one of the most incredible plays I've ever seen from a safety. He came from way far away, others almost not quite the far hash, but opposite side of the field. Favre thought he had basically a wide open guy, and Taylor closed on it and made the interception. It was absolutely fantastic. But overall, just a violent hitter, one of the best at recognizing how a play was developing. He could really see basically where a play was going. He was like a Jedi almost, where he saw things before they happened. And that was just extensive play study and a guy who absolutely loved the game. And he was not, I mean, he was one of the most physical guys you've ever seen step out on the NFL football field. I mean, that is not hyperbole. The guy lived to administer violence to other human beings, and he was really good at it. Great ball skills. He was just outstanding. And it sucks that we had to lose him, obviously for his family and for, life purposes, etc. But as far as just a kind of a perfect example of a football player, somebody who loved every aspect of the game, was excellent on every level of it, made all of his teammates better every time he stepped on a football field. You just cannot say, I cannot stress enough. I know it sounds like I'm making this up. It sounds like he's too good to be true, because he was. He was absolutely the real deal, and one of the greatest football players we'll ever have had the chance to witness play in the National Football League. All right, let's get back to the Packers. Let's get back to the live chat. Start Taysom over Rodgers. How would they do that exactly? Are they calling up the Saints and telling them to cut him, and then they're signing him, and then they're starting him over Rodgers? Who are some safeties who we can be looking at in the draft or free agency, or will we get someone on the team already to step up? That's a good question, Bully. I think the first preference for the Packers or for Gutekunst will be to sift through what they've got, whether that's Raven Green or what have you. But I do think they'll be looking at safeties in the draft. Who that might be, again, it's way too early for me to speculate on that. Why does it seem like there's such a lack of urgency with this team? That's a really good question. Normally I would say, well, you really can't read into these things. We really can't say from the outside. But I get what you're saying. When a team loses so many times in the same way, week after week after week, it does feel like, okay, if they were kind of feeling the tension, feeling the urgency, things would change. They would change their approach. And I think this is where McCarthy is a bit of, a kind of his own worst enemy, so to speak, because one of the attributes that Marc Murphy has cited and McCarthy himself has talked about is how he is never one to get too high or too low after a loss. He wants to stay the course. It's what he did when they were 4-6. I talked to him about that on my podcast a couple years ago when I was still on the beat. He talked about how, when they were 4-6, he didn't change anything, not a single thing in his approach. He said, I've got a way of working. It's tried and true. It's worked throughout the years. We've won a lot of football games with it, and I'm going to stick to that. And I think because of that, that is going to ultimately be his downfall, because it's been clear now for about 2 months that he's needed to change a bunch of different things. And because he has got a way of working and he's not going to change it, he's just going to go down with the ship, so to speak. It's his way. He wants to do it that way. If that costs him his job, so be it. I mean, that's about as simply as I can put it. And I know there are a million other aspects to it. There are a lot of other things going on, most likely behind the scenes that we're not privy to. But essentially, I think that's what's been happening in 2018. Derwin James is set to be an All-Pro his rookie season. I don't know what that has to do with anything, unless you're talking about the Sean Taylor tribute, which, again, I don't know what that has to do with anything. I love Derwin James as a player. I mocked him to the Packers in my mock draft for the Green Bay Press-Gazette. Do you think a defensive-minded head coach could help change the culture in Green Bay, making it not feel like every week 12 has to carry this team for us to win? Kelsey, I think that is the number one job of whoever gets that gig, whether it's a defensive coach or an offensive coach, is to, diversify the ball club, to find ways of winning without Aaron Rodgers needing to be godlike. That's what happened in 2016 when they were 4-6. Rodgers clicked. He played at such a high level, it papered over every crack until they finally just kind of ran out of gas in Atlanta. But this team has been built that way for way too long. They have got to emphasize a few other things, whether it is building up, say, a powerful offensive line to feature a running game to take some of that pressure off of Rodgers. It doesn't even need to be big road grading behemoths. Maybe it's just some super talented offensive linemen who allow them to run the football better, much like John Elway got at the end of his career when they got Terrell Davis and they leaned on him and rode that to 2 Super Bowl victories. Because look, I've gotten a lot of flack online today because I've dared to question Aaron Rodgers. I've dared to point out where he's not playing well, questionable decisions he's made, bad throws he's made, etc. And somebody's pushing back on me like I've been talking like he's been terrible or he is terrible. Nothing could be further from the truth, and I haven't even said anything close to that. I have pointed out where he has hurt his team, where he has hurt the offense. And anyone watching the tape knows that to be true. But he's still a very good quarterback. I can't look at what he does week in and week out and say with a straight face that he's one of the best in the league at the moment, because you see way too many throwaways, you see way too many missed opportunities, you see way too many balls in the dirt on 3rd and short, etc. But he still has all the ability in the world, and he still has the talent to be one of the best in the league. But he is going to need some help. He's going to need a team around him and a coach who is willing to kind of pull back the reins a little bit, not ask everything of him, and allow him to get into the flow, so to speak. Help him. Because right now, it's just not happening. But that is definitely still in front for Aaron Rodgers if they can find the right fit, head coach scheme-wise. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying Rodgers is terrible. Far from it. He's still one of the best when it comes to absolute talent. They just need a better director, a better guy to help him get it out, so to speak. People keep saying for us to go out and get a veteran receiver next year. What do you think Geronimo Allison is? Well, I think Geronimo Allison is a fine receiver. They hold his rights for another year, so I don't think he's going anywhere. But make no mistake about it, he is a great number 2. I think he can be a great number 2. He's not a bona fide number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. Not even close. His ceiling isn't begin to touch that. I think he can be productive because of the offense he's in and the quarterback who's throwing him the football. But look, they tried to go out and get Allen Robinson for a reason. That is a bona fide number 1 wide receiver. That's a guy who physically, just athletic testing wise, is off the charts. They tried to go get Sammy Watkins, much for the same reason, because his athletic testing, his ability, it's just far above what Geronimo Allison brings to the table. Now, that's not to degrade Geronimo Allison. I think, like I said, very good wide receiver, very good NFL player, but they need to upgrade from that. Need a coach with some life in him. I hear you, Travis. Favre as head coach would be an unmitigated disaster on the scale of the Trump administration. Wow. What an image. BJ Raji, next D coordinator? Yeah, why not? Why don't they use the middle of the field more? Why don't they call slants? Julia, that is an excellent question. If you go to the NFL.com Next Gen Stats on the quarterback page, they have a breakdown. It's kind of like a heat map of where quarterbacks are throwing. Every starting quarterback in the NFL. And, there's like sprinkles here and there, some deep, some short, some side, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Some at the line of scrimmage. Rodgers' heat map is just like all up the sides, all out, and like 2 dots in the middle. And that's it. I don't know why they're so averse to the middle of the field. Obviously, they tried a few shots to Jimmy Graham up the seam this past week. One connected, one didn't. But where the slant pass has gone, I do not know. It kills me. They should be running like 10 of those a game. But for whatever reason, they refuse to. And it's not like they don't run them. They do run them because they run slant flat all the time, but Rodgers rarely throws it. I really like Mike Pettin. Me too. Even if the Packers win out, McCarthy deserves to be fired, in my opinion. To quote Clint Eastwood in Unforgiven, deserves got nothing to do with it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, Marc Murphy is the only one that matters. His opinion is the only one that matters. I can sit here and say, as I have, that Mike McCarthy, it's time to move on from McCarthy. Fans online have made that clear for the last year and a half that they want McCarthy gone. All that doesn't mean anything. All that matters is what Marc Murphy thinks. And right now, he is keeping his own counsel in that regard. Joe Lombardi for head coach. I don't know about all that, Nathan. I mean, it's a lovely idea, given the family connection, etc. But, he was a washout as an offensive coordinator in Detroit. Not sure he's going to turn around and become a head coach in Green Bay, but I guess stranger things have happened. You never know. Tony Romo, head coach. No. Mike Pettin would be a good fit. I agree. What did you think of James Jones said about, what did you think of what James Jones said about Mike? I get it. Mike is James's guy. Of course he's going to go to bat for him. I'm not surprised. I know he's talking about the grass isn't always greener. And that's true. No doubt about it. But when you have a fractured relationship between your quarterback and your head coach that, for whatever reason, just doesn't seem to be able to fix itself, or they don't seem willing to fix it between the two of them, etc., to me, that's been the ultimate difference in this season. Is those two just seemingly not being on the same page, and for whatever reason, McCarthy refusing to get hardline with his quarterback. Great. Okay, so the grass isn't always greener. So we just stick around and watch the same maddening issues week after week, year after year on offense, and make no mistake about it. Outside of the run the table gauntlet that they ran where Rodgers played out of his mind, McCarthy and Rodgers haven't done a whole lot on the offensive side of the ball. They haven't done a lot together. Just they're to the point where it's pretty clear that whatever they were going to do in the league, they've done it. It's time to move on. Time for a new voice. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for all the questions. I'm sorry if I couldn't get to yours. Thanks for submitting on Twitter, here on the live chat. Thanks for watching on YouTube. Please subscribe, hit that like button, tell your friends, tell your family, like us, share us on Facebook, and hey, join our Patreon. You never know. You might win a t-shirt. Tons of fun here at Cheesehead TV. We're devoted to Green Bay Packers fans worldwide. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a good night.